everyone, and welcome back to Big Data Talks, in which we have conversations with industry experts about the way in which big data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence are changing the way we live. My name is jan-willem, and I will be your host again for this platform and podcast series. Today, I have the extreme pleasure to welcome Professor Dr. Angela Lee. Dr. Angela is the Associate Dean and Head of Department of Computing and Information Systems in the School of Engineering and Technology at Sunway University in Malaysia. She serves on the editorial and reviewer board for several international journals, such as the Journal of IT in Industry, Journal of Information and Knowledge Management Systems, Journal of Information and Management Systems, and she is involved in several committees and memberships on big data technical committees. She's a fellow of the Higher Education Academy in the UK, representing Malaysia in the International Federation for Information Processing. Dr. Angela holds degrees in Business Information Technology, a Master of Science in E-commerce, a Postgraduate Certificate in Academic Practice, and a Ph.D. in Computing. So you can imagine why I'm super excited to have her here with me as a guest today. Welcome, Dr. Angela, to Big Data Talks. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, William. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very exciting talk event. I'm really excited about it and waiting to start on this conversation with you.
Absolutely. So one of the first questions I always have is, where does your fascination for technology come from? What is the reason that you started to enter in this field in the first place?
Actually, when I started off entering this computing field, I know nothing about computer at all. All right. Back then was many years ago, where computer electronics just started, and everyone talking about the changes between paper, paperless, the moving between paper to electronic system. That was the time where computer systems started to bloom. So I picked the most popular course during that time to study, not knowing what to do. All right. So I stumbled across and I beginning to like it. And then I could move on to having my master's in e-commerce, also master of computer science in e-commerce, majoring in e-commerce. And after that, I moved on to obtaining my PhD in computing. So all along, I started as learning the computer system, how it is useful for companies, how companies can actually leverage on computer systems. But after a while, you see that what is the next big thing, you see? What can a company do with all the data? What is the future like?
Yeah.
So the question, am I producing the right graduate students out? Are they out there doing the right thing? Because that was after the bloom of computer science, the bloom of the computer systems, electronic devices. So we tend to look at what's next.
So how do you determine that? Because especially in the field of education, you're always looking to make sure that your students are industry ready. You would like to make sure that they have the best proper education that you can get in order to get them into industry. So how do you keep up with the latest in the very fast moving world of computer science?
How do I keep up? By joining trainings, all right. For an educator to keep up with the ever-changing technologies, we must consistently upgrade ourselves, consistently be on par to know what is happening in the industry. We have to work very closely with the industry partners to get what they request from us, and then we provide the best for our students and to make sure that the students actually have the right skills to work out there. Because me myself, when I was a computing student, when I come out to work, the things that I've studied is very different from what am I going to practice. Yes, so I experience it myself, and I do not want my students to have that experience. So working closely with industry is very important, because it kind of like bridge up the gap between what the industry want and what kind of graduates that we are producing to the industry.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So, speaking about these technologies, what are some of the most notable developments that you're seeing today and that should be incorporated in the course curricula of the future?
Course curricula in the future. Okay, actually, there's many things that going around in computing field. There are quantum computing, there are artificial intelligence in the market, machine learning. These are all very important key elements that we can actually embed it into our computing syllabus. It can actually boost up the value of the curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that this is probably one of the reasons why students select the program in the first place is because it is so much focused around new technology. So besides the teaching, you're obviously involved in a lot of research. What are some of the notable projects and some of the I would say papers that you're working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on pandemic issues, looking at healthcare data, and I'm trying to look at the data privacy that we gather from healthcare institutions. And we would like to predict the pandemic area and also try to safeguard those data with blockchain technology. So it's a merge between machine learning and blockchain technologies together.
And any insights that you can already share from that research?
Not at the moment yet because it just started. So we have not exposed this out yet. I just gotten the letter yesterday. So yeah, so we are working on that in coming future.
Nice. I look forward to hearing more about that when the paper is published. We might have to do a second interview.
Yes. The previous type of research that I have worked with is more on the predictive analytics on consumer behavior, looking at companies, how to increase their sales data, and also help them to understand better the consumer demands and needs in the social media world.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of data that you probably need and utilize for these kinds of research. How do you, as an academic institution, validate what kind of data is relevant for these kinds of research papers?
Don't quite understand.
Can you explain while if you are doing the research for these kinds of papers, how do you arrive at the data sets that you need in order to answer these questions?
Normally, we will work with the industry to
Okay.
gather the data because we can actually use data sets from Kaggle, or data banks, but we will prefer to have real sets of data sets, real world kind of data sets from the industry. So when we work with the industry, we need to sign some NDA documents, to
Okay.
protect the data, and it will not be able to release out from the researcher hands. So it will sit in the company, and we will draw the data out and we will analyze it from there.
Very interesting. So I'm quite sure that today there's going to be a lot of people listening and viewing and who are considering to go to university or that are looking at graduate programs. So can you explain a little bit around the faculty that you've built, Sunway University, and what is it that you are trying to achieve with your programs? A little bit of a background around Sunway.
Yeah. Okay. So we started off the degree in data analytics since 2016, and we are the first university that offer an undergraduate full-fledged analytics program at Malaysia. And since then, we received lots of students coming into the program itself. Until today, the programs has grown a lot. And we move on to creating a master's in data science. Of course, we have Ph.D. in computing, whereby the Master of Data Science students would then articulate to continue their studies in their Ph.D. So we have been a pioneer in these industries. We have been listed as the most prominent data science in the world, one of the most prominent institute in the data science field. Upcoming, we will be listed as the most recommended data science institute. So in Sunway University, we have three schools that is offering data science program. One of it is from the School of Science, School of Engineering and Technology, and another one is from the School of Business, and another one is coming from the School of Mathematics.
So a lot of students who are thinking of entering a career in data science are always quite anxious around the programming part, the technology part. What would you recommend to those kinds of students, whether data science is something that would be of interest to them?
Mhm. Yes, I do receive lots of students, coming to tell me that, Miss, I don't really like programming, but I want to be a data science, what can I do? And I'm weak in maths, but I want to be a data scientist. So what I can say that it's very, very different from the conventional programming when it comes to big data. The structure of the programs and also the programming part is very different from the convention style of programming languages. So it is easy to write, easy to create, and easy to understand. So it shouldn't be any problem for students that are interested in this field and
Yeah.
not afraid to code.
Yeah, well, I fully agree with you there. I remember that when I went to school, it was still C and C++ and system calls and all
Yes,
the arcane programming languages. And nowadays, if you're busy in the more Python or R, it's a world of difference, and
yes.
it's much more straightforward and not as complex and I would say basic as a lot of the programming that we used to learn. So I think from that point of view, the world of data science has become quite evolved.
Yeah. And we can tell, how old are you based on the languages that you learn. So I'm not going to tell you my first programming language.
No, I could have said that would be something in the Fortran library.
I'm not going to tell you that.
I can imagine. So how do you? Because obviously the programs that you are teaching are kind of guiding people to become the next data analyst, data scientist, or even into the engineering space within larger companies. How do you prepare students for that transition towards industry? Because I remember that when I went to school, it was all a lot of theory and it was all around fictional cases. But then when I went to the corporate world, it was so different from anything that I've ever learned in school. How do you try to facilitate or ease that transition?
Now, I experience the same thing as you do. So, to ease off the transitions between the students going through the workforce, would be we consistently have career counseling.
Mhm.
We do offer them internship as well so that they know what's happening in the real world. Now, the most important thing is that when we teach, we want to teach the students with real case data. Like fictional data, you still can use it, but it's for your explanations. But in the way that we cultivate the culture, the teaching pedagogy, in the syllabus, we would want students to play on the real data. That's why we work very closely with industry, and there's a lot of partnership with companies because they will provide us the data and allow our students to explore and brave enough to explore it and learn as much as they can, because this will actually close up and prepare them for the workforce. Learning from the theory, learning from the book is very much different from you doing the real data, you looking at the real set of data, because the real set of data would give you the real problem.
Absolutely. And I fully second that because if you work on something that is actually being used in any kind of company, it makes it so much more tangible and it's also going to help you with encountering problems that you see in the real world. I wish that was there when I was young. But we did not have that amount of industry data sets at that stage yet.
Yes, we learn everything from the book,
Yeah,
and then we try to imagine what's going to happen, but we don't see the real thing until we, work on it. So therefore, now we are very fortunate. We do not want to have this kind of experience given to our students, for our younger generations. We want them to feel the closure, between the things that they learn in the university and also the industry needs. That's why we will consistently have guest lecture. We also invited your good self over to give the guest lecture to our students, and our students enjoy it so much. They get to learn from you.
yeah. No, I loved giving guest lectures. It's always a moment to connect with the next generation, and especially people who are completely new to the field and don't have all that baggage from corporate experience yet. So from that point of view, I always like doing that. So that's absolutely was a great pleasure to provide that over at Sunway. So one of the themes that we're always trying to dive into with this podcast, and a lot of our listeners are kind of beyond the basics, and so therefore I always try to go a little bit deeper into the analytics and data domain. And one of the main next topics that I wanted to discuss with you a little bit more in detail is around the technologies and specifically the algorithms that are behind things like sentiment analysis, opinion mining, marketing, because those are kind of the key things that are part of the curriculum that you're also providing. So let me start with a basic question for everyone who's listening has no idea what we talk about when we are having a discussion around sentiment analysis and opinion mining. Could you, in a nutshell, explain what that is?
Okay. Sentiment analysis, because when we talk about predictive analytics, there are two types of data. One is, of course, data that relates very much to the structured data, which is numbers, and another one is on unstructured data. The methods and also the algorithm to mine these two data is very different. So we have different kind of technologies, different kind of algorithms behind it to mine out the result and also the outcome of it. So for sentiment analysis, it falls under the unstructured data. So we look at the textual sentiment analysis of it. We look at the text, we look at the post, we look at the images, we look at the sound of it, to mine out the outcome of the hidden patterns, right? So these are the things that we look at, and the algorithms that looking at it allows us to segment the data and brings out the emotions value through the analysis. So through sentiment analysis, you get to know the opinion mining of somebody. You get to know the product, whether it's selling good or not selling good, not sellable. You get to know whether your customers are happy with your product. Because you see nowadays customers, when they are not happy with your service or your product, they would not come in front of you and tell you, hey, I'm not happy, but you bend it all out on the internet and social media. So one of the best way to gather all this information is by crawling the data and then do a sentiment analysis to find out whether they're happy or they are not happy with your product.
Yeah, so I read a lot of articles and libraries around sentiment analysis, and especially in the last few years, we've seen that the accuracy and especially the level of confidence and that we can make predictions based on sentiment analysis is becoming increasingly more, I would say, reliable. Is that something you share?
Yes. Tuesday, when we started off with analyzing textual data, it is quite difficult because of the dictionaries. The lexicons are not so proper yet at the time, unable to rectify some of the terms, the features. But now it is more better because of the the built-in dictionaries that they have, more and more people that has already contributed in this field of research. Therefore, it is easier to do this sentiment analysis now. It's
Yeah.
becoming more accurate in matching the terms and also to find out the relationship between each terms.
And do you then use with the courses that are provided at Sunway? Do you use kind of the pre-programmed libraries and that will help students to get started, or is it learning it from scratch?
We teach them both. One is learning from scratch, and also we have some subjects that learn from the pre-libraries. Yeah.
Very interesting. So in one of the previous guests that I had on the show, they talked about the way in which systems can now also start identifying sentiment within voice. So in other words, if you have somebody on the phone, are they happy? Are they angry? And especially within the customer service domain, that can help because it could automatically reroute you to a person that is skilled or trained in dealing with specific emotions. Is sentiment analysis, when we look at textual data, is that similar to the techniques that we use for audio or maybe even video, or is that a completely different approach?
When you look at sentiment analysis, because it goes back to the text analysis, the text analysis. So when you look at the audio and the video, you probably would then deals with deep learning a little bit because the algorithm would be different to extract the informations and also the data from the video and also from the audio. So you can either extract the audio and then translate it into textual,
Mhm.
and then from there you do a sentiment analysis.
Yeah. So one of the things that I personally find very fascinating is now also that there's a lot of possibilities to look at facial expressions, and from that facial expression have the opportunity to see whether people are saying the right thing or whether they are lying or whether they are exaggerating things. And from a lot of the research, it shows that through facial expressions and especially micro expressions, we are moving towards a world where computers can detect and sometimes even predict emotions based on what people are seeing. So very famous example that we've been seeing is in the poker domain, in which people sometimes bluff and sometimes they are obviously true. And apparently, to a certain degree, this can be resolved through facial expressions. Do you think we're ever going to see the day that a computer based on this kind of machine learning and AI is going to be able to predict or win from customers?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think in the future definitely we are definitely moving towards that because reading on facial expressions, is one of the next big thing that the computing world are actually moving towards.
Yeah. So that always also brings me towards one of the more contentious topic is, of course, there's a lot of discussion these days around the extent to which governments can use facial expressions also for surveillance or monitoring. And it brings us towards that eternal domain of artificial intelligence, ethics, and how do you deal with these new technologies in a very much more responsible way. And I always wonder, is that something that should be taught at universities right from the start? And if so, how do you deal with data ethics with your students?
Yes. Data ethics is one of the very important aspects that we always inject to our syllabus, and we want our students to know this as well because the data that we gather is important to not expose it in the sense that because some of the data are quite private. Let's
Mhm.
say it deals with the customers' informations or even companies' information. So it's quite P and C. Hence, data ethics is something that we have in the syllabus, and also we want our students to know what they can do and how to protect their customers' value.
Yeah. Is
One
there
of the
a specific framework or guideline that you're using? Because if you look around the world, there's different ways in which countries deal with data ethics. There's different ways in which companies deal with data ethics. What's allowed in one organization might be completely not allowed in another. How do you find that balance? Because ultimately, ethics is also a bit subjective.
To be honest, at this moment of time, we do not build any framework yet on this. We have one subject on data ethics
Mhm.
under the Masters of Data Science program. For the undergraduate students, we have the data ethics subjects embedded in all our analytics subjects. We have about 13 analytics subjects in our undergraduate degree. So during the whole entire course, we will cultivate this knowledge to the students and make sure that they know the importances of data ethics, and to prevent it from exposing, or for the companies to secure or feel that they are secure with us, we normally, what we do is we will sign the NDA. So the document will be signed between the company and also the students itself and the subject lecturer.
So do you think there should be more, I would say, industry regulation around that? Because it's still very much a greenfield. There's no
Yes.
universal truth around this. Is this something that government should be looking into?
Yes. Government should be looking into it, but you see, because big data are becoming very, very important in the industry and also growth of the economy, by protecting certain data, we will be having a little problem in obtaining the data so that we need it for our analysis. So in a sense that, so much that they wanted to protect the data, at the same time they also want to release some of the data out so that people can actually work on it to come out with the outcome of it. So they should have like a governance, or probably a, a department to look into what are the data that can be released out public for us to analyze it, and what are the data that they should mask off. So sometimes when we work with industry, they are very concerned, like you say, that there's no because this area is still very green. There are no black or white kind of thing to determine what can be released, what you cannot. So normally the company would mask off the sensitive data which they think that it is sensitive.
Yeah.
And they can even jumble up the data and give it to us, and let us do the analysis.
Yeah. No, that's, and I think that's obviously a way in which organizations should be looking at it, because otherwise they might be violating their own compliancy policies as well. I can only imagine that besides Sunway University, there's a lot of other universities, not just in Malaysia, but I would say in the region or maybe across the entire world, that are all struggling with the same thing. In some of the previous conversations I had on this platform, we talked about the responsibility of corporates and sometimes governments to start formulating these kinds of regulations. But now that I have somebody who's very embedded in the academic domain, should there not be some kind of a cross-university collaboration to define how we're going to educate our next generation of students when it comes towards these data ethics questions? What's your opinion?
Yes, I think they should have, you see, because as I said, data ethics is one of the very important elements. The younger generation, if they want to embark into the data science field, they first must know this, right?
Absolutely.
They
Yeah.
first must, yeah, they first need to know how to protect the data and why data privacy is so important,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think it's becoming more and more important every day. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of people who have have an answer to this question at this stage, and that makes it tremendously complex. But at the same time, also I think a very very interesting topic.
yeah.
Good. I have one other major topic that I wanted to discuss with you, and that is obviously big data. You know, I'm very heavily involved in the domain of big data for the last few years. And one of the key things that we've been seeing around lots of other academic institutions is this push towards looking at more massive quantities of data instead of just a more regular analysis and analytics part. And if you look at the new developments with the OpenAI language models and big machine learning parts which look at photographs or audio, there's one common denominator, and that's you need massive quantities of data in order to come up with correct models. And also, it requires a significant amount of data to make sure that they're any good, because the accuracy is only going to be going up if you have more data points. I can only imagine that that is bringing a lot of challenges to universities, because in order to train these kinds of large models, you need massive computing power. You need, yeah, that's expensive also to kind of put it that way. So I was wondering, how does an organization and how do you, with the computer science department, deal with this development? And do you set up your own infrastructure? Do you partner with cloud providers? How do you tackle this drive towards big data?
Right. So you see, we are very fortunate because our management are very supportive with the development of the program and also the infrastructure in the university itself. The Sunway University, they are willing to invest in the high performance computing. They are willing to invest in the laboratories.
Mhm.
The labs are all up to date and using the latest technologies. We also partner with clouds, softwares, cloud services, because we know that because of the huge amount of data that is gathering, we need to have access to all these technologies.
Do you see any interesting developments in that analysis of massive data and the language models that are obviously very popular at the moment that you could leverage in your curriculum?
You mean the very popular
Tools,
languages?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I don't think that we are, because we are from the education,
Correct.
we use, we try to expose students to as many as possible tools so that they know. So some of them is proprietary services, some is open source. So we encourage them to use both.
Very interesting. So you can kind of already guess my next question. Obviously, in the whole education domain, including it for our own organization and almost every educator I talk to, everyone nowadays has to deal with large language models, and they are so good these days that they can write entire computing programs. They can also not just give you natural language but computer code. Um, does it change the way you've set up the curriculum in the last 6 months and to validate testing or cheating, if you want to call it that way?
Yeah, because of the new technologies like ChatGPT around,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. We do not discourage students from using it because it is supposed to be of good use. Hence, we need to educate our students to use it properly and to enhance their knowledge. on it. So for us as an educator, there are no difference between our way of designing the curriculum, even though we have all these new technologies out. But it definitely helps us in preparing the syllabus better.
Yeah, yeah. So you can even help it to write your syllabus these days. Yeah,
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you still require you yourself as a subject expert to validate the things that is given from the software.
correct.
So yeah, therefore we do not discourage students from using it, but we want our students to make full use of these technologies in a good use.
Yeah, so that they can ultimately embed it into the way that they see it as a tool. Yeah. Very interesting. Um, in the world of big data, we've talked about this before. A lot of people are saying that the next big thing is going to be the quantum computers that are able to analyze everything that we know today in a matter of seconds. Is this something you're venturing in as well with the curriculum? And if yes, to what extent?
At this moment of time, we have developed the Master of Data Science. So one of the subjects is on deep learning. Quantum computing would be the elective subject. Yeah, so we want to expose students in this area as well. We do have a lot of PhDs, postgraduate students are working in this area as well as their research topic.
Absolutely. For those of the people that are listening and that have absolutely no idea what we are talking about in quantum computing, how is it different from the regular computers that we know?
Well, quantum computing is faster because due to the excessive of the data, you see, the excessiveness of the data, and also the environment that is happening now, the high performance of the computing, and with the massive data that is coming in, the normal computing technologies will not be able to support the processing power behind it. So quantum computing would be the way or the future that we should move forward to.
Absolutely. Speaking about future, I know that I'm going to ask an impossible question, but suppose that we are looking 10 years from now, and we are having the same conversation that we are having again today. What will be the major change that a curriculum and universities are teaching compared to today? What are going to be the new subjects, the new things that will be part of what students need to know?
I think it would be something that are in the area of augmented reality,
Mm-hmm.
quantum computing, deep learning, and also cryptography, blockchain. Yeah, I think these are the areas evolutions that I think that the computing syllabus should actually move forward to these subjects to train our future graduates.
Very, very interesting. I fully agree with you, by the way, because I think that those are going to be the absolute new technologies, and we're only scratching the surface at this moment with at most of those programs. Interesting thing is that I also start to realize how old I become, because when I was in university, none of those subjects existed, let alone that we would have any kind of educational program around that. And that brings me maybe also as maybe a good bridge towards the one of my favorite questions that I always like to ask all of my guests who appear on the show, and that is that suppose that you were 18 again, and you could give any advice to your 18-year-old self on what they need to study and why. What would you choose, and what specific specialization would you go into if you were to do it all over again?
if I were to do all over again and I was given this opportunity at this era of time, I would still choose computing degree. I will choose data science, data analytics degree program because of the amount of data that is required, and also look at our surrounding. We are surrounded with technology, all right? We are surrounded with technologies, and data are consistently, collecting. So I would pick back the same degree and profession if
Well,
I
that,
was 18 years old and given me at this stage where the involvement and the evolvement of the technology.
that's very interesting to hear. It also means that you're quite lucky in the sense because I've spoken to a lot of people previously on this podcast that started in either history or in social sciences, and they transitioned into the field of computing because of their interest and the fact that it is basically shaping the world. But the fact that you say that you would do the same steps all over again means that you've absolutely made the right choice.
No regrets.
No regrets. Well, that's also a very positive ending for this episode today. Dr. Angela, I would like to thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us today. I always learn a lot from talking to industry experts and people who have been involved with the development of data science and these kind of topics. And as a result, the time always flies by. We're already almost close to an hour, and it's been a very fascinating conversation. So thanks so much for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Jen, for inviting me over your podcast. Thank you. Thank you.